Hi, this is Seth Whitehead, and we're happy to be joined today by Brad Gesell, president and co-owner of Gesell Pump and Sales and Services in Whittington. Brad has been the past IOGA president and fixture in the Illinois Basin as a small business owner and operator for nearly 4 decades. Brad, thanks for joining us today. And if you could just tell us a little bit about how you got into the business and how you've grown your business to the point it is today.
Well, thanks, Seth. Actually, my brother and I literally grew up in the oil business. My dad, he was a contract pumper and a field supervisor, production manager for a couple different small operators here in the Southern Illinois area, and he worked at the oil fields about all of his life. My brother and I started riding with him when we were just little boys. Then he kind of taught us the end of a hoe, where we hoed weeds around tanks, we painted tanks, we did everything, all the odd jobs we could to make a little extra money in the early days. And then about the time we got out of high school and a couple of years of junior college, he came up with the idea that we kind of went into business together. So with his connections in the oil business of looking after other people's wells and production, that we'd go into business together and start repairing downhole pumps. And so in his garage there in Whittington, we began fixing pumps. And Mark and I both went to school part-time, and then we would fix pumps in the evening. And that was 1980, so we've been at it 19 years now. But in the early days, pretty rough going. We didn't have any capital. We were a small business getting started in my father's garage, and we just kept, when we got a little extra money, we'd buy the next supplies, or started selling pumping units and pipe and this and that. So, and then we kind of grew it from there. From 1980 to 85 or 86, went along pretty good. We were low budget. We didn't have any money back then, but we just kept working the business and making our contacts and picking up customers. And then when 86 came along was our first taste of an oil crash. So what happened there was there were a lot of larger companies in Southern Illinois. The bigger companies started leaving because they just couldn't make it here in Illinois. The price crashed probably from $20, $25. It crashed all the way down to almost 10. So a lot of those companies left the basin, and that was kind of a double-edged sword. It created opportunities for us because people were selling their oil fields on one hand, but on the other hand, it also crashed our business because we couldn't sell services and supplies. So we started using bank funds, and we went out and purchased some of these old fields that some of the larger companies were leaving. So the Exxons, the Texacos, all the big companies left Illinois in that era. So that created a few opportunities for us. We got into oil production. We added our backhoes, our service rigs, complete line of services and supplies, roustabout services, tank truck services, winch truck services. And so we just kind of kept adding to it during those years. Then long about 1990, another price crash came, and we kind of weathered that storm. It was pretty rough. We had some layoffs then. And I think the most recent rollback in prices was 2014. So that was about our 4th time in the history of our business that we've gone through a severe price crash. But this one was a little better. We've got really good people working here, and we were able to weather that storm without laying anybody off. So we were very fortunate there, probably due to the fact that we were able to maintain our own production, keep all of our people working, even though our service and supply business crashed along with the price. We were still able to keep our own production going.
You mentioned that you started this business with your brother Mark. it seems that the family-owned business, the family-owned operators in Illinois, it's a prominent story that you see throughout the basin, and very reflective of the current environment in the Illinois basin. How rewarding is it to have a family-owned business, and how has that family-owned atmosphere, culture helped you guys through good times and bad over the year?
Well, if you go back to the early days, of course, the business was started with my dad and my brother. My mom worked here for a short time before she became an RN, and she worked at Good Samaritan Hospital for 20 years. And my sister worked here for a long time. She retired a couple years ago. I've got a nephew that just came into the business. 6, 8 years ago. He's a geologist. And, it's been very rewarding to be able to build a business right here in Southern Illinois, mainly Franklin County, Illinois, and be able to employ people from this county. People that some people we know, some people we don't, but these are good paying jobs. There's not a lot of economic activity in Franklin County, and these are good paying jobs. People want to work here. We have some people that's worked for us for over 20 years. They like working here. We like having them here. We've got 25 really good people, probably the best workforce we've ever had. And that's very rewarding that you can employ that many people with good paying jobs and right here in your hometown.
And you mentioned that you're a producer with dozens of wells throughout mostly Franklin County now, but obviously there's another aspect of your business, and I think it's something that folks probably aren't aware of, that there's an oil field services industry in Illinois, and obviously you guys are a part of that. Can you talk about that aspect of your business?
Yeah, that's actually what got us started, was the supplies and services part of our business. And we probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 customers, but if you look at that customer list, there aren't any big companies on that list anymore. Not every customer is active every month on our books, but we have probably in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 that are active every month. And if you look at those lists, they're local companies. Most of them are family owned, and they employ probably roughly, actually, let me back up. They may range in 1 to 2 employees up to 15 or 20, but most of them are not over 20 employees. So it's a small group, and they're usually locally owned.
Looking back on, you started this business, I believe, in 1980. Even though when I think of 1980, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it's almost 40 years now. What do you think has been the biggest change in the industry, especially here in Illinois, during that time span?
Well, we kind of touched on one of the bigger things that when I think back of the early days is, it was tough to break into this business because it was dominated by large companies with large cash reserves and they were very aggressive. So it was hard to break into it, but over the years, after a couple price crashes, you saw the bigger companies leave the basin, and that left a lot of opportunities for small companies like us and to be able to take over those fields and fix them up and prolong the life of them. And even today, we'll go out and we'll drill 4 or 5 wells a year, new wells, and then on the tail end of it, we're always plugging several wells a year because they eventually pump out, and then so you plug the wells and you either sell the equipment or you use it on a new well somewhere else.
What do you feel is the biggest misconception about the Illinois oil industry among the general public, the average Joe, the person that doesn't necessarily live in the Illinois basin or live near oil production? When you meet and talk to folks like that, what do you think is the biggest misconception about our industry?
Well, I think the biggest misconception is that Illinois oil production is thrown in with the rest of the country, in that you see them on TV. There's giant equipment, giant fields. Illinois is not like that. It's not big company, big fields. It's kind of smaller oil fields, smaller operators, smaller family-held companies, and local owners instead of being large out-of-state owners. That kind of sets Illinois apart from the rest of the top oil-producing states because we are so much smaller in a tighter-knit community.
And this probably will dovetail into my next question, but what do you feel is your favorite aspect about being in the oil business?
I'm very proud of the fact that, we have been here for almost 20 years, or excuse me, almost 40 years.
Yep.
My math is getting a little wrong there. I'm older than I think I am, I guess, but it's very rewarding to employ that many people for that long of time, and like I said before, they're good paying jobs. One thing, you wonder if you have a good job. We're big on having a good reputation if you're treating people right and you got a good standing in the community. But one measure of that is the feedback you get. And we've always said, if you treat people right, do things the way they should be done, then you'll always be successful in business. And I just saw a grade school teacher of mine 2 weeks ago at the Whittington post office. And he walked over to me and we were talking it up just a little bit. And he says, you know what? He goes, I'm proud of you boys. He says, you guys have done well. You've treated everybody good. You've got a good reputation in the community. He says, I'm proud of you. And to me, that's a measure of success when you can build a company and be in business that long, and somebody like that that's known you for most of your life comes up and says, I'm proud of you. So, because we came from nothing, by the way. We started out with almost zero capital and built this thing from my father's garage. So when somebody comes up in the post office like that and says, you know what, Brad, you and your brother have really done well, and I'm proud of you.
Probably hard to imagine, but if you weren't in the oil business, what do you think you would be doing or would have done?
I have no idea. But I will say this. At one of the price crashes, I don't remember which one it was. It could have been the one in 86 or 91. At one of those times, in one of those crashes, I think I know how to run a company, and I think I understand business. Maybe some people might differ with me, but I think I know how to do that. But I remember taking the Yellow Page book back when people actually had phone books, and you look at the Yellow Pages and you're like, gosh, could I do that job? Could I get into that business? Because it looked like it was the end of the oil business in Illinois and probably the whole United States, because it's one of those severe crashes where the American market was getting flooded with foreign oil and it looked like the end, and things weren't so good. We didn't know if we could make it. So you start thumbing through the Yellow Pages looking for things for advertisements like, could I do this? Could I do that? Because you have no idea what else you would do. So to answer your question, I don't know what I would do.
Well, fortunately, everyone pulled through. Well, not everyone, but most everybody. And you guys have survived and thrived. And I think hopefully, knock on wood, we'll see stable oil prices here in the future. So we talked about the oil industry, obviously, in your history. But what can you tell the folks out there about your life outside of the oil and gas industry, and what other activities and things you enjoy, and outside of work?
Well, to be honest with you, there's not a lot of outside of work because, Mark and I still work at least 50 to 60 hours a week. So that doesn't leave a whole lot of time outside of work. But the things that kind of involved in right now is I just got through with a 4-year tenure of being chairman of the board of the Rend Lake College Foundation, and that's a very rewarding job right there. I'm still on the board, but I've kind of taken a back seat out there, and My wife and I, we try to travel to warm places in the wintertime. We're kind of sun seekers, but and then I've got a couple motorcycles we'll take for a little ride every now and then. But outside of that, you know, work is kind of my life, and yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy being out in the community. I like drilling oil wells. I like operating oil wells. It's fun to me. It's still fun. So when your work is still fun to you, then what's the saying? If you enjoy what you do, then you don't work a day in your life. Well, that's kind of the way I see it.
Well, Brad, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk about your business, a small locally owned business in Southern Illinois, and there's a lot of similar stories out there throughout the Illinois basin, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk about your story.
Well, thank you, Seth. Appreciate you coming down.